All right, hello everyone. You know, before I get into my prepared remarks, when I come into this room, usually there's probably 30 or 40 people gathered around a table, and we're talking about important things that are happening all over the city. And I get such energy from these conversations. So it gives me incredible pleasure to be here today, being part of this announcement. Throughout COVID-19, but really way beyond that, our immigrant and refugee community have really been stressed. Always, because it's a difficult life to leave your home country and come someplace new and really try to start building a life. But it's been particularly challenging in this environment with this president, who literally came down the stairs, what now seems like a lifetime ago, demonizing our immigrant and refugee community for his own political gain, and unfortunately, he has not stopped. But in Chicago, we have a very different view. I was just on a call with people from all over the world around a tech initiative that's going to be happening here in Chicago, and the words that I left them with were these: in Chicago, we will always be a strong, open, welcoming community to immigrants and refugees from every part of our globe, because that's how we are a strong global city. Our diversity is our strength, and we will never abandon those values. I mean that from my heart. It's critically important to everything that we are, and we need to make sure that our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, everywhere, regardless of citizenship status, have the same opportunity to fulfill their God-given potential as anyone ever in our city. That is our commitment and our solemn vow, and I want to make sure that we reaffirm that every opportunity that we get. I want to start, before we get into the substance, by talking about another tragic death of a Chicago police officer. While we are still awaiting further details, what I know is this: we had an officer that died. I believe his wife is still alive. We think it was carbon monoxide poisoning. The details are still evolving. But this has been a hard week for everyone, and it's been a particularly hard week for the Chicago Police Department. We had 2 police officers shot on Monday and Tuesday. One in the line of duty, answering a domestic call and trying to give aid to a victim who was then shot by the abuser. And then another, a shooting involving an officer who literally had gotten off duty, pulled his car up, and someone tried to rob him. These are difficult times for all of us, but we have to make sure that we don't forget the sacrifices that our men and women who are first responders make for us every single day. Now, I'm proud to be joining all of you here at the Resurrection Project on this hopefully beautiful morning. You see the sun shining through a little bit. This is a very important day in our city's fight against COVID-19. And I'd like to give special thanks to some of our residents and community leaders standing with me now. This includes, I call her my senator, Senator Kimberly Lightford, who is a fearless leader and has done great things for not just her community, but really the entire state. So thank you, Senator, for being here. Of course, Resurrection Project CEO Raul Ramundo. Every time I'm with you, I feel like something good is happening, and that I am the beneficiary of that glow that is generated by the hard work of the Resurrection Project. So thank you so much for your generosity. And of course, Maria Ochoa, who serves as one of our community navigators and is a former client of our Legal Protection Fund. Thank you for being here. Yesterday, we announced our first step in establishing how we as a city will use the $1.3 billion we are receiving from the CARES Act, funding that will provide critical support to our families and businesses impacted by this terrible disease. And I want to emphasize that the money that the city of Chicago puts into our communities, we do that without regard to citizenship. This will come in the form of more dollars towards rent and mortgage relief, more assistance for our small businesses, more job training for members of our workforce who've been struggling to make ends meet, and more support for mental health and violence prevention. We talked about trauma. We can't talk about it enough. The mental health crisis that is a reality in our city pre-COVID has only been exacerbated since then. And as we said yesterday, funding from CARES Act is about more than just COVID-19 itself. It represents our latest recommitment to our communities, the latest step in our mission that began over a year ago to revitalize our neighborhoods and make sure no resident is ever left out from the incredible opportunities that this city has to offer and that are created by all residents in every neighborhood. Nonetheless, as expansive as the CARES Act may be, it leaves behind thousands of our residents. Many residents who represent our essential workers and are themselves members of the very same communities hardest hit by COVID-19. These, of course, include our undocumented residents, our mixed status families, our dependent adults, and our college students living in poverty. Imagine that, college students living in poverty. This includes our recently incarcerated residents and those experiencing homelessness who all too easily can fall between the cracks. They all need support. They need our care, our love, just as anyone else. And we can't allow what happens at the federal level to divide us. And that's why we created the Chicago Resiliency Fund, a multi-million-dollar developed in partnership with the Resurrection Project and generous donors like the Open Society Foundation and others, all towards providing vital financial support to over 300,000 Chicagoans unable to benefit from federal financial stimulus by providing $1,000 per household for eligible Chicagoans. And we're able to do this because of the passion and foresight of our city partners who saw a problem and stepped up in a big way toward creating a solution. This announcement today has literally been weeks and weeks in the making. And I am so glad that we are finally able to say, it's here, we're going to provide these supports. We have to thank the Open Society Foundation for their $1 million pledge toward the Chicago Resiliency Fund, and the Resurrection Project for their role in making sure this support goes to the families that need it the most. And let's be clear though, this is not just a one and done announcement. To every Chicagoan out there looking for ways to help your fellow residents, and I get that question all the time. Our neighbors, our brothers and sisters are struggling. This is an important additional way that you can support. You can chip in now by donating to the Chicago Resiliency Fund by visiting the website, resurrectionproject.org/Chicago Fund. That's resurrectionproject.org/Chicago Fund. Please do donate. The same goes for our local credit unions. There will be those who are unbanked and will need assistance to cash their check. Please make sure that you are generous in not adding on additional fees so that the checks that come, people will be able to embrace and enjoy the full benefit of those funds. And what makes this fund unique is that it does not focus only on one segment of the population, but instead it aims to be as inclusive as possible. It represents our values of equity and inclusion and transparency, and it puts those values into action. Values that have guided us through this incredible crisis, both COVID-19 and, as someone eloquently said, COVID-16-19. We have to be strong and united as a city and leave no one behind. I want to thank everyone for being here. I particularly want to thank the Resurrection Project, the Open Society Foundation, and our anonymous donor for your generosity in seeing this need and taking specific actions to meet the challenge head on. And now I welcome Raul Raimondo to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership, passion, and resolve during these turbulent times for our city and our nation. I heard you this morning in Morning Joe, and you are truly not just a city leader, but a national leader as well. My name is Raul Raimundo. I'm the CEO of the Resurrection Project. Resurrection Project is a multifaceted organization celebrating 30 years of building healthy communities through our wealth-building strategies, building tangible and non-tangible assets, and through community ownership. Let me also thank many of our state leaders, Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford, State Senator, and the Governor, and all the foundations and philanthropists who have stepped up to address the inequities exposed in our communities by COVID-19. The Resurrection Project is proud to partner with the Open Society Foundation and many community organizations to assure that most of the families who need these kinds of resources will be reached. Today, as we announce the Chicago Resiliency Fund, organizations will be ready to deploy these resources. As of June 22nd, we'll be taking on applications. As the mayor mentioned, and I'll reiterate it, to stay informed, visit our website, resurrectionproject.org/Chicago Fund. Be generous, because this is just the beginning. To be eligible for these funds, you must be an individual or family who did not receive stimulus check, and you must be a Chicago resident and are working with our partners. We are working with our partners to make sure that there are no duplicating efforts. Organizations like ICER and many other organizations across the city who are deploying resources by the state and other institutions, we want to make sure that there are no duplication of efforts and that we are working in a coordinated way to reach as many families as possible. Eligible households will receive a one-time check of $1,000. We know $1,000 may not go a long way, but it certainly will help in these troubling times so that families can stay in their home, put food on the table, and pay their utility bills. As COVID-19 continues to expose inequities in Black and brown communities, we are proud to be joining forces with the mayor and others on the rebuilding process and healing process that is needed to make sure that communities of color once again begin to thrive. Now I want to introduce Kimberly, our state majority leader, State Senator Kimberly Lightford, but before I do, I'm just going to summarize my remarks in Spanish. Gracias a la alcaldesa por estar con nosotros esta mañana, por su compromiso, pasión y liderazgo en este ambiente tan turbulente. El proyecto de Resurrección está anunciando hoy la creación de este fondo de apoyo para dar ayuda por lo menos de $1,000 a familias que necesitan y han sido afectadas por la crisis de COVID. Estamos orgullosos en trabajar en cooperación y sincronización con otras organizaciones para no duplicar esfuerzos y asegurarnos que muchas de las familias tengan estos recursos. Estos fondos, las familias que son elegibles para estos fondos son familias que no recibieron ayuda federal, y esta ayuda va a estar disponible a todas las familias, no importa su situación inmigratoria. Nuevamente estamos nosotros orgullosos en trabajar con la alcaldesa, en asegurarnos que nuestras comunidades de color, latinas, afroamericanas, una vez más puedan tener éxito saliendo de esta crisis. Ahora quiero presentar a nuestra senadora y jefa de liderazgo, nuestra senadora Kimberly Lightfoot. Majority Leader, State Senator Kimberly Lightfoot.
Good afternoon. Again, I am Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford, and we've had some challenging times over the last, well, I would just say for 2020. There's been challenging times in 2020, but I'm so honored and pleased to be a part of this wonderful project. There are so many people to thank, especially the donors at this time who have brought forth resources from their hard-earned resources to share with those who are in need. So that's really applaudable. I'm happy to be joined here with Mayor Lightfoot. I think that the city is so lucky to have a little fireball in Mayor Lightfoot. She is so strong and intelligent and on point for all of the subjects that have taken us aback, and she's been doing a phenomenal job. So thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, so much for your hard work. The Chicago Resilience Fund provides important relief for Black and brown lives and livelihoods during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I just do want to remind us that we're still in a pandemic. Black and brown lives are infected and dying at an alarming rate than any other group. COVID has highlighted historic inequities and systemic injustices. And again, Mayor Lightfoot, for so eloquently and boldly releasing data and information that we all knew, but that we really needed to see, that became a national conversation. Our mayor started a national conversation. I want to commend the Chicago Resilience Fund because it recognizes these disparities. It is a response to the pain of generations and generations and generations of disinvestments and racism. It is also a glimmer of hope. We can't stop. We need justice. We need direct investments in our community. Healthcare, business, education, police accountability, and yes, direct cash assistance to the poor and vulnerable. I look forward to seeing these funds reach poor families across the city, and especially in the Austin community that I represent in the 4th Senate District. Again, thank you for supporting those who have traditionally been left out of every conversation and out of every support system that has been allowable. I appreciate the help, and I'm here to advance any agenda that's going to help those in poverty. Thank you. My apologies. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker. She is a community navigator, an awesome young lady, Miss Maria Ochoa.
Buenos días, me llamo María y soy mamá y soy inmigrante. El año 2020 empezó muy bien para mí. En enero me llegó mi residencia y me hice residente a través de mis hijos que están en los Marines. Y fue con la ayuda de la ciudad de Chicago Legal Protection Fund que recibí ayuda legal gratis. Estoy muy orgullosa de ser de Chicago. En abril, toda mi familia se enfermó de coronavirus. Fueron días muy difíciles. Gracias a Dios, todos estamos bien. A mi familia no nos tocó el cheque de estímulo porque hasta ahora hago mis impuestos con el número IT. Trump dice que no lo merecemos. Trump dice que no lo necesitamos. Pero Chicago dice lo merecemos y Chicago dice nosotros importamos. Gracias.
Just going to translate. Good morning. My name is Maria. I am a mom and I am an immigrant. 2020 started very well for me. In January, my green card arrived. I became a resident through my children who are in the Marines. I received free legal assistance through the Chicago Legal Protection Fund. I am proud to be from Chicago. In April, my entire family became ill with coronavirus. They were difficult days. Thank God we are all fine. My family did not get a stimulus check because until now, I file my taxes with an ITIN number. Trump says we don't deserve help. Trump says we don't need help. Chicago says we deserve help. Chicago says we matter. Thank you.
I don't think there could be any more powerful testimony than that. And that's what we have to stand for as a city. You do matter. We all matter. We all have to be united in our support of each other. Thank you for those very powerful words. Thank you. Happy to take your questions.
Mayor Lightfoot, the first question from Kelly Bauer with the Block Club. She says, people have been ordering only drinks at restaurant patios. Why is that allowed, but we're not opening bar patios where people would do the same?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understood it.
Yes, people have been ordering only drinks at restaurant
Oh, I see.
patios. Why is that allowed, but we're not opening bar patios?
It shouldn't be. If she's got a list, we'll make sure that we remedy that situation. We haven't opened up the restaurants as a pretense to allow bar drinking that wouldn't otherwise be authorized.
Mayor, the next question on the list, Amy Jacobson, she is asking, more and more people are hearing the tapes of the fiery exchange you had with certain aldermen during a briefing after the riots. Do you regret using such colorful language?
First of all, if you heard the entirety of the conversation, it was, I believe, on a Sunday night, the conversation that went for an hour and a half. And unfortunately, one of the aldermen, and I think we know who it is, illegally taped and then shared only that portion of the conversation that served his purposes. What I'll say is this. These are tough and difficult times, and we ought to be able to have candid conversations. There were a lot of incredible emotions that were shared on that call by fellow aldermen, now all of whom don't feel secure or safe coming together with their colleagues because of one individual who decided to illegally tape a conversation that was intended to be a private conversation among all of us. Shame on him. Shame on him. That's what I say.
Mayor Alex Nitkin from the Daily Line asked the question, do you still expect the fair notice eviction ordinance to be passed by the City Council this month? If so, which committee will it be routed through?
So my understanding is that the chairman of the Housing Committee, Alderman Osterman, wanted more time to work on that. So obviously we defer to him, and it will come forward when we all believe that it's ready.
Mayor, this next question comes from Ryan Burrow, a reporter anchor with WGN Radio. The president of the FOP says he's informed all officers who take a knee or side with protesters while in uniform, they will be subject to discipline, including expulsion. What is your reaction to that as you work to build better community policing relations?
I don't really think that we should credit those kinds of really unfortunate comments, and I'm not going to dignify them with any further response.
Mayor, this next question from Ravi Baishwal, ABC 7. Do you think Chicago's response to the Laquan McDonald murder and subsequent conviction of former officer Jason Van Dyke is the template for improving police accountability in the post-George Floyd era?
I certainly believe that we have a lot to add to not only the conversation here in Chicago, but really nationally. I am chairing a working group that was stood up by the U.S. Conference of Mayors, along with 2 other mayors and 3 police chiefs nationally. And we're looking at a number of different issues. And of course, I shared with my colleagues in that work the Police Accountability Task Force. I think there's a lot of good work that happened as a result of the civic uprising and righteous anger at not only the killing of Laquan McDonald, but the suppression of the videotape. I think we've learned a lot as a city as a result of that circumstance. And as you know, we're in the middle of a consent decree. I'm unhappy with the pace at which the change is coming. We have a new superintendent who's committed to that change. I just had yet another conversation with him this morning about that. But I do think that in Chicago, where we have taken steps to make sure that all of our officers are CIT trained, that de-escalation is a regular part of the cadence, not just for training for new recruits, but all our officers, body-worn cameras, that we have a specific written policy on the release of video, audio, and those initial police reports. There's a longer list, but my point is that we've been working on these issues now for really 5 years, and I think we do have a lot to say. And one of the things I think we've got to do better, though, is make sure that our entire city understands the very specific, concrete steps that we've taken all towards police reform and accountability, and then more transparency about the journey that we're on, the milestones that we've set for ourselves, and we'll be rolling out some more additional information on that in the coming days.
Mayor, this next question is from Mike Flannery, Fox 32. An economist at the University of Chicago studied the COVID-19 shutdown. He concludes that it was too broad, that job losses and economic damage could have been reduced by at least 1/3 if the shutdown order focused on zip codes with the heaviest rates of infection. Your response?
I don't really understand the logic of that, to be honest with you. This virus came into our city and then spread like a wildfire, affecting all parts of our city. Of course, disproportionately impacting and continuing to Black and brown communities. But the premise of the question is we would have known ahead of time where it would hit, how it would hit, and therefore we would have tailored our response accordingly. That just defies logic and defies the public health analysis and data that I think that we've now accumulated. And what I'll also say is this. In March, when we started the stay-at-home order and we started the other shutdowns, we were on a trajectory the same as Italy. We were in exactly the same footprints. And we were fearful that we were going to see over almost 70,000 people affected and over 9,000 people dead. Those were real projections at the time by lots of public health and epidemiologist experts, that if we hadn't done something as dramatic as what we did, we would have lost a heck of a lot more lives, and we would still be suffering from the fallout with so many people sick that would have overrun and crushed our healthcare system. Now, as both the governor and I have said, there have been no easy choices, none, not one, through this whole pandemic and crisis. But I'm comforted by knowing that we didn't see the catastrophic results that would have really pushed our healthcare on the brink, if not really put it on its back. That's what we were facing. And of course there's been an economic impact. I just announced yesterday that as a result of COVID and the closures and the loss of jobs and business and tourism, that we're looking at a $700 million budget gap just for this year in 2020. But for me, and thinking about the potential loss of life versus the loss of income, that's an easy call every day. Always choose life.
Mayor, Mike Flannery has a follow-up. He's asking, what is the city doing to reduce infections in nursing homes going forward, where we know the greatest danger exists?
Well, we've been very active in congregate settings, nursing homes. Obviously, we've been supporting the jail and other congregate settings from the very beginning of our response to COVID. And we've supported that. Obviously, the state actually has primary responsibility for nursing homes because they license nursing homes. But we have a lot of senior facilities. In fact, Resurrection Project supports a number of senior facilities. So what have we been doing? We've been going in and getting testing. We've been training the workforce. We've been providing PPE and other supplies, and we've been doing that over and over again, and we'll continue to do that. Those congregate settings were a primary part of our priorities from the very beginning, and they continue to be. And we're starting to see some decent progress there and seeing the rate of infection go down, I think because of the interventions that both the state and the city have done in these congregate settings.
Mayor Lightfoot, a question from Jennifer Kuiper, WBBM AM Radio. What are examples of some of the other options you say the city needs to look at when filling the huge budget hole due to COVID-19?
Well, we're going to start where we started last year. Keep in mind, it was just a year ago that we walked into almost $1 billion budget deficit for 2020. So where we started is look internally. We look at how can we be more efficient in the delivery of our services. What are we looking at in terms of vacancies? What are we looking at in terms of programs that we may not need to engage in this year that we can put off to an out years? So that is the exercise that's been going on now for some weeks, and we will continue to do that. We are fortunate that early this year, we went into the marketplace and restructured and refinanced some of our debt. We had $100 million savings over and above what we had anticipated and budgeted for. So that $100 million will certainly be the first down payment. We're looking at whether or not we can go back into the marketplace again to restructure other debt. But obviously, we've got to wait and make sure that market conditions are right. But we're looking at every tool in our toolbox. And as I've said repeatedly, while I can't take anything off the table at this point, the last things that we're looking to, after we've exhausted everything else, will be property tax increase and layoffs. I hope we don't get to that point because I think there's a lot more that we can do before we get there.
Last two questions.
Mayor, follow-up from Jennifer Kuiper. Are there problems that have arisen since the city entered the latest reopening phase, or are you satisfied with what you've seen so far as compliance?
Well, we've only been open a week. It seems like much longer, but it truly was a week ago Wednesday that we entered into phase 3, our cautious reopening. Of course, there are some things that we need to work through. We need to keep educating people about how to be compliant in a lot of different business types, not-for-profits and so forth. But I think we've made good, significant strides so far. But it's all about education and conversation and collaboration, and we'll keep working on it.
Last question.
Last one. This is from Fran Spielman. Last fall, you said you wanted to make the $95 million Police and Fire Training Academy bigger and better. Now those who want to defund the police department are pointing to that expense as one area where money could be diverted to education and social services and rebuilding long-neglected communities. Are you still committed to making this project even bigger than Rahm Emanuel intended?
Well, it's not about making something bigger just because. But let me deal with the underlying, I think, narrative part of the question. For me, what I'm hearing from people in the streets is don't pass us by. Don't neglect our neighborhoods. You know, Senator Lightford, I think, said it well. Decades and decades and decades of disinvestment. That's what we walked into. And that's what we're committed to correcting. That's why, even in the face of a massive budget deficit last year, we didn't forget our values. We supported our immigrant and refugee communities. We supported mental health. We supported affordable housing and a lot of other things that are crucial to creating strong and vibrant communities. Our Invest Southwest initiative, $750 million city dollars, along with private capital, to really infuse life into commercial corridors like in Austin that haven't seen a nickel of investment in decades. We have to stay the course and double down or triple down our commitment to making sure that every single neighborhood in the city is able to participate in the richness of the city. Every single one should have a pipeline to good jobs. We need to focus on eliminating health disparities. That's why in February, which also now seems like a lifetime ago, I put down a marker challenging everyone to eliminate generational poverty in a generation. People in our city are hurting. Our neighbors are hurting. And we have an absolute solemn obligation to answer their calls and their demand for resources. And that's exactly what we will continue to do. Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.